All right. Will the Committee of the Whole Finance for Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026, please come to order? Will the clerk please take the roll?
Berger. Here. Hines. Here. Maxwell.
Here.
May. Here. Reese.
Here.
Stuckmeyer.
Here.
Yurchak.
Here.
Rosberg.
Here. You've had the opportunity to review minutes of the Committee of the Whole Finance for January 6th and January 20th, 2026. January 20th, 2026. I'm sorry. And may I have a motion to approve them?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes have been approved. We have one piece of draft legislation, and that is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to purchase a new Caterpillar 926-14A from Ohio Cat. This was not presented at Public Ways due to, well, it was, we were going to authorize that to go out to bid, but we did find one in stock that we could take delivery on very quickly. And I did talk with Mr. Bellick about this, and I said, let's just, if we can get the thing right now, and it has already been budgeted for this year, there's no sense in waiting.
So it was included in our budget?
It wasn't included. It was included in the budget. We were going to go out to obtain it, and they actually have one in stock that we can get much quicker than if we wait and go about this differently. So I would like to see this brought forward and suspend the rules and to make this purchase so we can get this piece of equipment in and running right away. So I was going to see if Mr. Berger would move this forward, but before that, if you have questions, let's go on with questions.
Sure. Yeah, I do have a question. Is it the same cost as before?
Yes, so the loader is the same model that we have for the street department, the airport, and now replacing a 2006 Volvo loader out at our wastewater plant. As Mr. Rosberg said, this particular piece of equipment is on the lot right now. Typically, it's a 4 to 6 month lead time on that piece of equipment, so it's kind of nice being able to get the thing delivered. It is a Sourcewell contracted item. We get a 24% discount from Sourcewell and another 6% offered from Ohio Cat on this piece of equipment. Like again, as mentioned, it was a budgeted item, and we're asking for your suspension of the rules, emergency clause, so we can go ahead and get it ordered.
Is this purchase complete off the lot, or does there have to be mods done to it after we buy it?
No, it's ready
complete.
to go.
Ready, okay.
Mr. Berger, I would add, to answer your question, this purchase price exceeds the budget amount. Can you speak to that, Mr. Bellick?
Sure. So we had a $210,000 amount budgeted, but we had some money that was able to be transferred over in the wastewater capital fund to cover the extra $5,000 for it.
So it's an extra $5,000?
Correct.
Okay.
Matt or John, could one of you maybe explain, I don't know, is everyone familiar with what Sourcewell, what contract purchasing is? Is everyone aware of what that is? Do you?
I'd be happy to explain. Yep. So the city, under municipal procurement laws, we are required to go out to bid to seek purchases over a certain amount. I believe it's $79,000 this year and some change. And normally that is the process you would do with any contract which is in excess of that monetary limitation that's set. Just for purposes of education, that monetary limit moves. It increases 3% per year based upon some law changes down in Columbus. However, cities like us have an opportunity to purchase through cooperative purchasing arrangements. Cooperative purchasing arrangements like Sourcewell, there are other types of arrangements that are out there that the city is a member of, essentially removes the bidding requirement. It does not do away with the bidding requirement. It basically means that Sourcewell, or the company who holds a cooperative purchasing agreement, has done the bidding process with eligible vendors, and have submitted that to the state of Ohio to say, hey, we did this process, it complies with procurement laws as the state requires, and these vendors are eligible to be purchased from by statutory political subdivisions of the state, the city is one of those, and complies with the procurement laws of the state of Ohio. So essentially, it's an alternative form to get goods and services, it's more goods than anything, through predetermined procurement processes in the form of cooperative purchasing arrangements or agreements. It's a long-winded lawyerly way to explain that, but I certainly can answer follow-up questions if needed.
No, makes sense.
So you said we get a certain % off for using Sourcewell?
Actually, John said that, and it is true. Normally, vendors participate in a process where they compete with other vendors, and through that competition process, their price of goods, or in this particular case, a vehicle or a unit vehicle, is greatly reduced because they want to win the bid, because they're looking to do volume-based business more than profit on single unit-based business. So what happens is statutory subdivisions like cities, townships, villages who use the purchasing agreements actually realize a significant % savings off of a sticker price in this case, because that competitive bid process has gone on, and the state or the cooperative purchasing entity has accepted a lower based bid because the vendor is looking for volume-based business to make up its sort of pricing. So there is usually some percentage savings as if we were going to go out, bid it ourselves, or purchase it off of a lot with an emergency piece of legislation that allowed us to do that. Because we're participating in the cooperative purchasing arrangement, we get a break.
And do we have a fee that we pay Sourcewell?
We do not pay a fee to be a member of Sourcewell.
Not as an end user, the vendor pays.
The vendor pays, right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
One of the other advantages of it is when you do that, you don't have to use the manpower in-house
Yep.
to put a bid together, and you don't have a lot of that tied up. It's a very, it's a very popular way of municipalities purchasing things.
Excellent point, Mr. Yurchek. We spend a lot of time, whether it be engineering, whether it be Mr. Pellet, Mr. Testa, myself, reviewing or drafting RFP or RFQ processes, which are onerous and changing depending upon the unit or what you're trying to acquire. So having these services available to us greatly reduces that resource level and resource demand. And they've been very good. I can't recall, I'm looking at my colleagues here, I can't recall us running into any issues with purchases through a cooperative purchasing arrangement. And I don't think they've run afoul of anything the auditor's office have found either. They're very well vetted.
One more question for me, Mr. Balick.
Sure.
It's not going to sit for 3 to 6 months, right? We're going to use it right away?
No, it'll be moving as soon as we get it on site.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Berger, would you take this and
Sure.
suspend the call?
Sure.
It'll be ordinance number 26-029.
And let's review the rest of the regular council agenda. Ordinance number 26002, sponsored by Councilmember Reese.
Putting that on third reading, I assume?
Okay. And then ordinance 2615, Mr. Maxwell?
Yes, we are going to put that on third reading this evening.
And then ordinance 26026, Ms. Hines?
That needs to be amended, and the extra 4% fee for the acting agent.
I can speak to that if you'd like.
Angela.
It was added at this point where we've seen this a couple of times already, and now it's just being added now, so I was kind of curious.
Sure. So again, this amendment, first and foremost, corrects the incorrect parcel number we had before you at our last meeting. So it has the correct permanent parcel number adopted. But it also added language that essentially would allow the city to pay 4% of this purchase price to the CIC. Since our last meeting, the CIC has met, and there was a good discussion about what should the CIC receive as acting as the agent for this sale and future sales. And so the decision of the CIC, and there are several members of the CIC that are in the room with me, so please correct me if I mischaracterize anything or leave out something important to that discussion, but essentially it was determined that we should look on a case-by-case basis at the sale of city assets conducted by the CIC and determine a reasonable percentage rate for those activities. In this particular situation, as you can see, the purchase price is rather small in terms of overall purchase price. It's $15,000. And so the decision was made to request that the CIC receive 4% of that purchase price for the work that it did in terms of effectuating the sale. Essentially, in this particular case, I know Mr. Morris, on behalf of the CIC as the executive director, received several phone calls and actually actively tried to market the parcel to adjoining and interested landowners. He, in addition, put together the process in which bids were received for the parcel, and then he ultimately was the decision maker in terms of reviewing and making a recommendation to the CIC on who to ultimately enter into a sale agreement with. So for those activities, a 4% fee was considered reasonable. That equates to $600 for this particular transaction. Don't know if there are any other questions. Be happy to answer those.
And then those fees would just go into their general funds, the CIC?
Exactly, Mr. Stugmeyer. You know, the CIC does not have its own funding source necessarily, and so we were looking to establish some level of revenues, while perhaps not consistent, but revenues that the CIC could use for its mission as it moves forward.
And again, this is a case-by-case basis. This 4% is for this transaction only. Transaction in the futures will be judged accordingly, correct?
I believe so. I think, I'm not speaking for the other members of the CIC board, but I think we wanted to take a reasonableness approach based upon the magnitude of the work done and the transaction involved.
Thank you.
In consideration was taken that should we have used a realtor for this, the percentage would have been most likely higher. So it's still funding the CIC somewhat, but also keeping costs down for the city, and it's a win-win for everybody.
Does the CIC have any paid employees?
Does not.
Are we concerned, Mr. Proudfoot, of city members receiving any money in this case since they're part of the community corporation, with some members of the city being on the community corporation board giving money to them, to that organization? That's okay?
Could you start your question back?
Sorry.
Hear the beginning of it.
Giving $600 to the CIC with members that are city officials on the board, there's no legal concerns or anything regarding that?
No, statutorily, there are certain requirements, certain elected officials, there are certain members of administration that are required to be on a CIC
Okay.
board. A CIC is a statutory entity.
Sure.
So everything that was done here, even down to the 4%, the small fee there, the reasonableness. So when Director Hiscock used that term, that's taken straight out of the Ohio Revised Code. They also talk about a nominal fee, et cetera. So everything that they've done, I've actually reviewed and had discussions with multiple people, and it's all accurate in the way that it's statutorily set out to proceed.
Thank you.
And forgive me if this question was already asked, but it has just occurred. We don't have any debt or any liens against that parking lot, right? That piece of property, there's no money owed for that?
None that I'm aware of, no.
Okay.
Ms. Hines?
I'm going to amend that and then suspend and call.
Okay. We will amend and suspend and call. Okay. Other business? Mr. Hiscock?
Sure. So thank you. Thank you for scheduling our meeting a little bit early tonight, as we wanted to continue the discussion and quite honestly seek further clarity in terms of funding the downtown infrastructure project. By way of review, and I'll move quickly through this, I know council participated in a work session with the consultant team most recently on MLK Day. And we had very productive discussions about what this particular council would like to see done and the pros and cons of some of the aspects of the improvements and the cost estimates associated with those improvements on where to go. Since it was a work session, council was not able to make definitive decisions or provide guidance, and that directive was followed. But we certainly had good discussions which identified some of the likes and non-likes of members of the council. So I think what we would really like to do is continue that discussion in a committee of the whole or finance committee forum where you can have thorough discussions, deliberate openly, and maybe make some decisions and provide us with guidance on where we went or where we go from here. And I think with the idea that ultimately, if there is a necessity for any additional legislation coming out of this discussion, that legislation would be prepared and provided to council at our next regularly scheduled council meeting for a vote on that. But essentially, to give us direction on where you'd like to go and what we want to do, we need to further those discussions. So in furtherance of that, I think we took an approach. I will tell you, I took an approach based upon my notes from our work session and sought some clarity from our consultant team as to additional opinions of costs based upon those discussions that we had. On January 28th, I forwarded to all of council an email which included the consultant team's responses to my requests. And essentially, my requests were outlined in terms of questions to them regarding costs based upon the comments that were made by many, if not all, of the council members at our work session. The consultants did provide us with some revised opinions of probable cost. If you're familiar with the email, I won't regurgitate all of them, but essentially those additional cost items totaled about $1.55 million in terms of their recommendations. And I would generally tell you that what they entered into was a process of analyzing the proposed costs that they had provided to all of us in the different improvement items, and then greatly reducing those in certain areas. You know, some to the effect of 7.5%, some removing altogether, some reducing by 35%, others again reducing by 40%. And or even more than that. I think the highest reductions in two categories were 58% in terms of reductions. They also added $100,000 to an item in which they labeled wayfinding, which was a discussion point coming out of the work session. So they did also in that email respond to some of the questions that were raised during the work session. So I hope you had an opportunity to review that. I think at the same time, based upon those discussions, my notes indicated to me that there was some semblance of majority interest by the council in terms of certain aspects of the improvements that had been previously proposed, meaning there were numbers associated with those previous proposals, and based upon discussions and my notes on those discussions, there were several improvement areas that received majority support. And I would generally tell you, again, based upon my notes, it looked like improvement number 3, improvement number 5, improvement number 8, and improvement number 9 all received majority support. Majority support, as Matt Hiscock defines that, was 4 or more members at the work session expressing interest in those elements of the proposed design. There was interest in other aspects of the improvements. However, again, based upon my notes from the meeting, those did not receive majority support at the time of the work session, but are certainly open for discussion this evening and deliberations this evening and direction and guidance this evening. I can certainly pause, but if you'd like me to continue, I will certainly do that. So in an effort to answer anticipated questions, I also reached out to our municipal advising team. That's Baker Tilly. Some of you were either on council or in the audience at the time that Mr. Cooper from Baker Tilly provided us with some information on not only this project, but debt issuances of the city in general. And what I did was I reached out to his team again to talk about providing a revised estimated annual debt payment cost for some of the things that had been discussed. And so let me provide that to you if I can. So from a starting point, in the budget today, without any action or revision from this council, the previous council had approved what we would call the base option, which was referred to as option A, plus improvement number 2. That changed the base level number in our proposed project, which was presented by Mr. Cooper in December during budget discussions, of $11.4 million. Because we added improvement number 2, our base cost of project is now $13.2 million. That's what it is today. That's what was approved in the 26 budget. If we decide to use, and I'm going to stay at the level of the numbers in which I have. I apologize if it's not the numbers that you're thinking about, but it's the numbers I had to work with in anticipation of our meeting this evening. If we stay with the revised recommendation or opinion of cost from the consultants in response to our questions coming out of the work session, we would have a total project cost of about $14.8 million. Specifically, $14,844,000 would be those options. That essentially is the adder of $1.55 million in additional dollars to our funding. If we stuck with the original improvements that were optioned to us for discussion, that would be improvements 3, 5, 8, and 9, the ones that received majority support during our work session discussions based upon Matt Hiscock's notes. That would add about $1.7 million in options. So that would bring a total project cost of about $15,024,000 based upon my calculations. Again, that's $1.7 million of additional costs. So for the currently approved $13.2 million, total annual debt repayment cost is a little over $1 million, about $1,066,745, with $628,000 coming from general fund support, if that was a total debt issuance in that amount. The remainder amounts would come from the various enterprise funds who would contribute towards debt payment. Those enterprise funds, by way of reminder, include the Stormwater Fund, the Telecom Fund, the Sanitary Fund, the Water Fund, and the Electric Funds. Moving to the next option, that would be the total price option.
Excuse me, Mr. Hiscock,
Yes.
could you say what that total was? What was the total?
The estimated annual debt payment cost would be $1,066,745. That's for the $13.2 million that are currently approved project.
And that's over 20 years?
20-year debt issuance if we would go that route. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. The next item would be, again, for purposes of summary, it would be the $14.8 million cost, which is essentially the addition of $1.55 million. totaling $14,844,000. The total annual debt payment on that debt would be $1.1 million, with $753,077 coming from income tax dollars, the rest spread over the various enterprise funds that I just mentioned. And the enterprise fund amounts don't change in any of these options, because again, we're doing the utility work, whether we do add any money or don't add any money, we're doing all the utility work. I will tell you, these are estimates, and if there's something that moves from a general fund dollar into one of those utility funds, we'll analyze that at the time we receive bids and based upon whatever discussions we have this evening. The last option, which would be the $1.7 million adder, which would include options 3, 5, 8, and 9, would have a total project cost of $15 million with an estimated annual debt repayment of $1.2 million. Of that $1.2 million, approximately $767,520 would be general fund debt repayment amounts. The remaining portions would come from enterprise-related funds. I think I've done a lot of talking, and I'll stop talking at this point.
Mr. Hiscock, real quick, so in addition to these numbers, we will also have the construction management fee from the CMAR, is that correct?
Mr. Maxwell, that is an excellent question, and I wish I had a definitive answer for the council tonight. I do not. I will tell you what my strategy would be. In spite of this being a public meeting, I will offer that strategy. My thoughts would be not to come to this council and ask for any additional dollars above the discussion points that we've had. The reason being, within both the base amount, currently the 13.2 option, or any of the other options, our consultants have baked in a contingency amount. And the contingency amount, as I understand it, appears to me to be healthy enough to allow for CMAR fees to be deducted from that. Admittedly, it would deduct some of the availability of those contingency dollars if we ran into a construction issue or not, but it would not drop them to zero if the city receives scope agreements from qualified CMARs that fall within the industry standard percentages. That's what I don't have a crystal ball on. It seems like we're going to get that. I just don't know that. So, short answer, coming from a lawyer, it depends. And what that means is we think we can do it without asking for an additional dime for a CMAR process. However, I won't know that until we get into CMAR scope negotiations and fee negotiations.
So where are we in that process currently? I know that we had the legislation, we've passed that now to start looking. Where are we in the advertisement piece to do that?
So the CMAR RFQ has been floated not only through our engineering division, through the consultant team, back to the engineering division. It is now sits on my desk for final approval. So we have not published that offering at this point in time. It took quite a bit to get to where we are, talking about RFQs and RFP processes. There was a lot that goes into it. By way of education reminder, the city's only used the CMAR process one other time, and that was for the construction of the fire station. The CMAR process is a rather new project delivery model that's available to public entities like cities only within the last 5 to 8 years, quite honestly, and we've only done one project that way. So I wanted to make sure that I leveraged not only our inside knowledge base to draft this RFQ process, but also had the consultant teams weigh in, because there are some unusual aspects to our ask in terms of the CMAR, in terms of communications and impacts to businesses that they don't really get in their standard building CMAR process. So it's a little bit of a unique process. I wanted to make sure we did our due diligence when advertising, that we found firms that not only could do good construction work, but had a plan for good communication and phasing issues, which has been vitally important in our discussions.
So when you advertise this and it gets out to the public, there's going to be a generalized scope of work, I'm assuming, that will be in that advertisement. Will there also be a dollar amount associated with what the potential project costs are estimated at based on the budget numbers that come from the consultant?
Not in the initial process, because the process is statutorily governed and it does not allow public entities, I don't think it allows private entities actually either, but public entities for sure, does not allow you to talk about costs at the quality-based selection process stage. And that's the first step. And so the first step is advertise the project. What my directive to my team has been, give the folks enough information so they can determine that's a project we can do, or that project is outside the scope of what we normally do, or that project is costly, not sure we want to get into it, or that project fits our business model perfectly, I'm interested. So we probably have more detail in our CMAR RFQ document seeking qualified consultants who might be interested in our project than most would have, but it does not and cannot really contain anything about scope dollars or those kind of things. Generally, one of the first things we get is, how much is your budget for your project? That's usually what happens. And we can answer those questions, but we can't talk about their fees or their scope. You can only begin those discussions after you've gone through the quality-based selection process and identified, what we'll try to do is identify top 3 consultants, and then we'll interview each one of those consultants, and then we'll select number 1, number 2, and number 3, and you begin negotiations with number 1. That is when you talk project budgets in a CMAR environment. That's usually, well, we normally charge 18% as our CMAR fee. And I say, thanks, I'm going to call number 2 if it's 18%. Oh, wait, don't call yet, it's really 8% kind of thing. And that's where the negotiations begin. We also begin to talk about the scope of our contract, because you have a contract with the CMAR, just as you have contracts in the bidding environment elsewhere. So we'll enter into a contract, but that all has to be by statutory authority in different steps of the process. So it's really a 3-step process. Seek qualified base selections, interview those qualified entities, enter into scope negotiations with them, and then actually get authorization to enter into a contract, which will set the price of their agreement, as well as set the price of what we'll call guaranteed maximum price, which will say, you will construct this project for this total. That's where we have to make sure it's within our budgetary authorization, or any changes to that have to be brought back to this council for discussion, request of authorization, any of those types of things. So for instance, if the CMAR fee is too high and we're just not able to get anywhere, or I'm being unreasonable in my amounts and not all 3 entities are saying, hey, it's going to be this percentage because of this complexity, that is when I'll have to come back to this council and say, tried my best, here's the agreement, we'd like to make the recommendation to go with this entity, here's their fee, it's outside of your approved budget by this much, we'd ask your consideration of an increase in budget to X. I really don't expect that, but it could happen in this situation.
I have a question about the numbers breakdown. So I understand the 13.2 is 1 and 2, and the highest one you had, which was what, 15, was 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and 9. But what are we including in the 14.844?
If you recall that email, there were several different areas. I can generally run through it for you if you'd like.
But it's still 3, 5, 8, and 9, right? Is the 14.84?
It's actually 3, 5, 8, 9, 10, and it has new item 11 in it. And it has those at a reduced price, if you remember from the email. So for instance, 3 has been reduced 7.5% to 310,000. So they took a harder look based upon our discussions at what was involved in 3 and said, hey, let's reduce the size of those bump outs and save money in the process. So they reduced that estimate to 310,000 by 7.5%.
So when you're talking about the largest number, which is just 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and 9,
Yep.
is that back to the original
Yep.
quotes for that and not the reduced? Okay,
Yes, that's correct.
That's why I was confused.
Yep, that's correct.
So, Mr. President, I have a question just as a rule of how this works. So is the council going to have to vote on each individual piece, like a 3, a 5, an 8, a 9? Or are we hoping to have a dollar amount in mind and vote on the dollar amount? I'm just curious on how that works.
And and then along those lines, if we do vote on a dollar amount, is there a possibility of, number one, we've got a dollar amount, we can get going on everything, obviously, which is, prime factor. The other thing is if some of these items, do they get prioritized? It's like, okay, out of the 1.7, we need the bump outs, we need this, we need that, and prioritize them, and then not almost, work down till the money runs out, and then if there's enough for everything that we allocated, everything on the list does get done. Like maybe if the signage is last or anything, or that couldn't, because of legislation, that couldn't really work that way with the contract.
Could I piggyback on that
Sure,
too,
go ahead.
please? Because I guess my next question with that would be, some of this work may not be completed until '27. So could we potentially be, putting some into the '27 budget versus having it in the '26 budget? And a question, I don't know, I would ask that.
So I'll try to address some of those, but I think the question was directed to Mr. Rosberg. I'm happy to pinch it if you'd like me to.
I would like you to pinch it.
Okay.
Sorry.
No,
Great question.
I know
They're really good questions.
we had some discussion on some of those items, and really didn't follow up with each other on that to shore it up, because the other thing is the funding, so.
So I would tell you this. There is no rule as to what guidance council provides the administration at this point in time. So you could decide to give a number, and then essentially what I would do with your number is look at the notes from what you've provided, what was supported and what was not supported, and try to deliver on as many of those items as possible based upon your number. The mechanics of how that would work is I would take your number and say, hey, design team, here are the notes, because they took notes too about what was liked and what wasn't. Here is the revision to the overall project funding number, design it so we get everything. I would then expect they would come back to us and say, Matt, we appreciate the confidence you place in us, but we can only do X, Y, and Z on it. Of those, they'll probably provide me with a priority to say, we think based upon our discussions throughout the process, based upon what we heard from council, based upon what the numbers we believe to be in terms of cost, we would prioritize these items in the design. I would probably engage with Mr. Rosberg to say, here's where we're at, here's where we're going. Would you please let council know, or would you like us to schedule something with council and present where we're going to go? Either way, it's got to get designed, and that's the time crunch. We've got to get the design and engineers engaged on whatever options you'd like included in the design. If we run out of budgetary monies, what you can do is add alternates in the process when we go out with the CMAR. And the CMAR will leverage their expertise to get their vendors to give us the best pricing to maybe wrap some more of those alternates into it. So, again, I hate this answer. It depends, but I think we have some options. You can provide guidance based upon where you want to go. The numbers that I presented tonight were, again, based upon the caveat that that's what I had to work with for you, and that's what I took away from our work session and in a brief discussion with Mr. Rosberg as to what direction we might go. So you're not bound by any of those things. You can do more or less. It's just going to make it a little bit more complicated to ferret out what we do and what we don't do with the revised opinions. Mechanically, I don't want to speak for Ms. Fix, but Ms. Fix's division will create a supplemental appropriation if you choose to go in any direction, and that appropriation will have a dollar amount associated with it. And so it won't identify a dollar amount with item 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 in it. It'll just have a dollar amount. But we know from what our discussions had, what you'd like to see delivered based upon that dollar amount. And that's on me and my team to make sure we work with our consultants to get what we can for those dollars. And if we can't deliver on it, it's on me to communicate to you all that based upon that number, we just can't do X, Y, and Z. Again, that's why we've engaged our consultants throughout the process, and they've provided these cost estimates to us. So they think we can do these things for those numbers, at least today. If the bottom drops out of the asphalt market or the oil in general or any other construction-related aspect, their numbers may not be good. But their numbers are pretty good based upon comparable projects that I've been looking at using their numbers. In fact, I think they're being a little fiscally conservative because they might be high even once we got a CMAR number. So we'll see.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if I answered all of these questions. There were a couple multi-parters, but I think I got it.
It's pretty good.
Okay.
Are there other questions for Mr. Hiscock?
Yeah, I have, I guess, a financial question, Mr. Hiscock, so I'm not sure if you want to answer it or Ms. Fix here. But I'm looking at our debt schedule by fund here, and in 2024, round numbers, our debt was 40 million. In 2026, it looks like our debt is over 81 million right now. How does that affect our debt service or our credit rating for future projects and funding those?
Yeah, we did talk a little bit about this in our work session, and with the current numbers for this downtown project, before any add-ons of 1.5 or 1.7 million, we won't pay debt service on this project until 2027, and the total debt service for the entire general fund for all general fund debt, which includes some other things, we're at 11.5% of our income tax allocation. And I did speak at that work session a little bit about AAA and AA plus rated cities stay at around 10% or below. When you start going up to 15%, between 10 and 15%, most cities are in a growth area. They're adding improvements for expanding population. When you get above 15%, you start limiting potentially your future issuances and your income tax allocation if it goes above 15%. At 20%, your credit rating starts dropping. So with the current project, we're at 11.5. I had run the numbers for an add-on of 1.7. Mr. Hiscock saying it, proposing slightly less than that. With a $1.7 million add-on, we're at 12.2%. So, and we also talked about when you hit that 15% mark, and even now, you need to know what your priorities are. What are the future projects? What are the future needs for general fund type debt? So, something to keep in mind.
Thank you. I guess to go off of that and help understand better here, you sent council, the 5 and 10-year capital plan, and it looks like, in 26 we're projected to spend 64.3 million with the capital plan, and 27 an additional 23, 28, 25 million, 2029, 28 million. So I guess just my concerns are if we're already kind of right at that threshold for our credit limit, and we have these future projects as well, which are in the tens of millions, how does that affect us in the future for future funding, future projects? Adding, 1.5, it sounds great in theory, but then when we start looking at the long-term numbers, I have concerns and kind of want to understand the numbers a little bit better.
So there's a lot in that question. I think, again, when you look at our 5-year capital plan and our 10-year plan, and we actually go out to 15-year plan, please understand that not all of that planned debt issuance is out of general fund dollars. In fact, the vast majority of the large-scale numbers have nothing to do with the general fund. They have to do from utility funds. So some of the discussions and some of the statements that Ms. Fix makes are, I think, tailored towards looking at the general fund and the general fund's impact on Wall Street and how Wall Street looks at the City of Wadsworth in terms of being a good debt or a bad debt, or our rating those areas. But you have a whole spectrum of water and sewer related debt issuances that have no effect or very little effect, if any, on bond ratings because they're not part of that same equation. At least Wall Street doesn't look at them that way. So that's why you have cities in Ohio that have hundreds of millions of dollars of utility debt, and they're still rated high in terms of either AA or better ratings in terms of bond market financing. It's really just general fund that you look at. So it's important to make sure that you understand that when you look at $81 million of proposed debt, not all of that is in the areas that we're talking about 15 to 16 or 15 to 20% in danger areas. There are factors that are in play there. In addition, those capital planning documents are just that. Ultimately, they're a planning tool. They're not a budget tool. They're not an approval document. All of those decisions have to be made on an annual basis by you all or future councils as to whether we go there. In addition, I think it's reasonable to expect that we probably won't do every one of those projects on that schedule. But we needed to have a schedule, and we needed to make sure that folks like you all and future folks understood what the plan was for dollars. Because as part of that process last year, we took a very aggressive approach to cutting expenses within the general fund. And if you remember, in December after we did that, Ms. Fix presented to you the general fund cash policy. And what did you see? If you remember that graph, do you recall what it looked like? What's happening in that graph? Mr. Berger, what's happening?
It's going up.
Yeah, and what's going up exactly?
Cash reserves?
Cash reserve in the general fund. So, do you ask yourself, what do our constituents want to see us do? Do they want to see us stockpile cash in the general fund? Or do they want to see us use their tax dollars for purposes which encourage and enhance their lifestyle or provides better services to them? That's really what you're tasked with deciding what to do and how to do it. We ran into a problem in the past, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, where we seem to be stockpiling cash without a plan. We put a plan together, and now we should be stockpiling cash because I'm worried about the plan. We can't have it both ways. We've got to make decisions on where we go. I think all of us want to make sure, and I know I'm committed to, and I think everyone over here, as well as everyone on the DS is committed to, we don't want to put this city in a bad situation based upon debt for the future, where we're not able to do certain things in the future. However, debt in the governmental sense is much different, I would tell you, than debt in our personal finances. Debt is a tool to spread the cost of an asset that would be used by 20 or 30 years worth of citizens over all of those individuals. We should not use cash for a 20 or 30-year asset that will be used by taxpayers in the future who don't pay their fair, equitable share of that investment. That is a standard, well-accepted principle. Wall Street understands it. We understand it as municipal finance folks. Counties and townships understand that you must spread the cost of long-term assets amongst all users of that asset. That's why debt is not a terrible thing in the municipal world. Extreme debt is bad no matter where you look at it. That's bad. We won't let that happen. You're committed to not letting that happen. I know the Finance Division is committed. We are committed as administration not to do that. But that takes a diligence and an annual look at what we're planning on doing, what we can do, and what we can't do. And that's what we've got to keep being diligent about in terms of those decisions. There's nothing wrong, and I'm not going to sit here and say that your concerns about debt and the city's debt is wrong. It is not. You're not going to hear me say that. But it's different than when you look at debt from different areas. And please remember that debt in the enterprise operations is different than debt in the general fund, in the income tax-based operations. That is a unique difference that is challenging for many folks, elected officials or not, to understand and to grasp, because it's different than your home checkbook and your personal finance budgets. In addition, the city relies upon two primary forms of income. In the general fund operations, it's in income tax dollars. In the enterprise operations, it's user fees. You control the destiny on user fees, just as we came to you with a recommendation as to why, and a third-party recommendation as to why those had to go up. We also have forever lived within our means in terms of the income tax rate. The city has not raised income tax since 1982
with the exception
of street improvement funds. So we have demonstrated an ability to live within our means in those areas. What also happens is we're not stagnant. Although my crystal ball is no better than any of yours, we're not stagnant in terms of growth. In fact, we've got some exciting opportunities for growth happening in different sectors going on that will help us in revenue generation, that will help us in user fee generation. So when you're worried about a debt over 20 years, it's certainly understandable to be worried. It is your job to be concerned and to help us manage those costs. However, don't ignore that you've got 20 years of revenue that you don't understand that's going to help pay for those debts over 20 years. It's two sides of an equation that are very, very important to all of us that we need to measure and be calculated with.
Thank you.
Going back to the actual plan itself, I know we discussed the maps at the work session, but did a majority of us vote that that was something we were looking to add? I don't.
The what?
When you say
The
maps, are you thinking wayfinding?
Yeah.
I mean, I think there were discussions of, just it came from Public Ways, that maybe there should be some better signage for parking around, and I assume that that's what that is included in that, as well as some of the other things like that,
Okay.
map and things like that.
Okay.
Is that right?
That is. I mean, again, it was your discussion, but that is an area that has been discussed for years, actually, now, that it would enhance parking identification, would enhance certain business or governmental office locations. That would all be included in wayfinding. And I think really the consultants threw out a number. Wayfinding is pretty expensive, actually, based upon our research into it. And so they put a number without putting too much diligence in it, really trying to give us something. That number is about $100,000. I think that's probably a little light, believe it or not, based upon our needs. But that is something that can be added into our contract as an alternate if we choose to fund it. It could be something that we do outside of the scope of this agreement, maybe with cash. It's just something that was factored into that one item that they gave back to us because they knew it was mentioned and important.
Okay.
Would you entertain sponsorship opportunities for something like that from like local businesses to possibly advertise on it? I mean, is that something to help offset the cost?
Mr. Maxwell, we haven't had any specific discussions about that, and I think we'd have to really consider whether that's the look aesthetically that we would want or not want in our downtown.
Okay.
I will tell you, I'm actively looking for sponsorships at Free Park, if anybody's interested.
I got a quick question going back to debt. Do you know roughly how much of the debt is general fund and versus utility?
When you say debt, are you talking about this
Not this,
projected
but just
project or the overall?
an outstanding debt.
Outstanding debt.
I do remember that in the 26 budget that about 76% of it, I think, was utility
Utility?
related. I'd like to clarify something. My comment about what your priorities are in the general fund have to do with parks and the Brickyard, because those were taken out of the capital plan completely. And so that's the reason that cash escalated. So, but you still have to deal with the percentage of income tax dollars that are going to debt. And so Mr. Hiscock talked about a lot of the projects are not general fund related, but parks are. That's the main one.
Thank you.
Other questions? Other comments from the administration?
Have we done any more research into plans for the blue tip or fireworks with the project going on?
So I would tell you that if this project proceeds and we go to a CMAR stage, any contractor's going to want to control their construction site. And when you tell them, you do have control of the construction site, except on these 7 weekends, we're going to pay for that. The project's going to pay for that. The phasing of the project's going to pay for that. It's going to be a problem from that standpoint. Now, I think we've identified that we need to not impact the parade route. And so that's just got to be part of the base contract. They have to understand it, they have to plan for it, they just can't be doing work on the College and Broad Street segments during Parade Week. 4th of July, we've talked about. If they're doing some type of phased work on 1 or 2 segments of the downtown, we think we can live with that. It might not be to the same scope as we've seen in terms of the number of food trucks or the activities downtown. It just has to, something has to give during this project. And if we don't provide the contractor with the rights to the site, we're going to pay for it. And I'm going to be coming to you, and you're not going to be happy with me talking about over budgets and delayed phasing of completions that impact businesses in downtown. It's going to be a problem with that. I think other aspects, once we get into the snow flying, I think you can understand that project work might slow. It's not going to stop, but it might slow in terms of intensity. Those might not be impactful, but Scare on the Square, I think that's going to be impacted. I think that's going to be a discussion with our Main Street partners to say, hey, what can this look like differently for a year? And where can we host it, or what do we do with it? So we've laid some foundational discussions with the Main Street group. We did that early to let them know about what was happening. We hope to get the Southwest parking lot completed to become a new home to some projects in the near term, or some events in the near term. But yes, that there's going to be impacts to downtown events as we know them, and probably events that you're going to hear from constituents who are not happy about the impacts.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion, questions?
Yeah. So how do we move forward getting the administration a number?
That would be, if anybody wants to make a proposal, I guess we could make a proposal as to how to address it going forward so that we can give them direction here over the next week or so.
Well, I don't know that we can until we have a CMAR, because we have to understand what the timeline of the project is. So, if I'm understanding that correctly, because we could be looking at deferred dollars into 27. So if the CMAR is on, we could then have a conversation, look at the timeline, and then potentially go with. Am I saying that correctly?
Not exactly.
Because we would be paying, what we need to do is we need to give the design team what they're designing so that the CMAR can price it. So if we're not going to if we don't want any of these improvements, then the design team's not going to spend time designing them, which the CMAR is ultimately going to be bidding on, or creating his GMP based on what's in the project.
Yeah, we really need to establish a total project budget, and we need to do that soon. The CMAR, that's the one area of the multi-point question that I didn't ask, or didn't answer. I would say, I would welcome Ms. Fix's input, but based upon all of the work we do day in and day out, when I go to enter into an agreement with the CMAR for their services and construction of this project, we have to have all of the funds available. So it wouldn't be, I couldn't say, I need you to do this, and in '27, I need you to do that. They won't, that doesn't work. That doesn't work from our standpoint, from a contracting standpoint. It certainly won't work for a CMAR. They're not going to be interested in that type of approach. Basically, what we do is we make sure we have the dollars available in whatever funding mechanism we decide to go with, and then we have that available. We give the design team the instructions to complete the design for a project of this cost, and the CMAR gets on board and we negotiate, here is the project. They use a base percentage to set their CMAR fees, and then before I sign that document this year, I have to have the funding in place essentially for that agreement, that contract.
Okay, thank you.
I would certainly think we don't want to exceed the one.
So I think if we, let's say council was to, let's say we were to put something on our agenda to increase the amount by $1.55 million, you go through the whole process and they come back and they're over budget, we're back to deciding what we want to cut if it's not coming in under that number. But we're relying on the estimates from the design team and everyone else that you've talked to get as close to what we think that number is going to be. They could end up coming in lower, and we could say, great, or we could say, well, what else can we add? I mean, it's just a game, because we're somewhat of a game, because we don't have actual real numbers. So I think it comes down to, what do we want to see our downtown have? And are we willing to add some money to this project to go out to bid to see if we can get it for that dollar amount?
And I think
Remember, if the numbers come back and they don't fit what you've authorized, not only am I not authorized to enter into it, I'm going to come back to you and tell you the results of that process.
Well, I think we move forward with the Mr. Hiscock's email and the additional plans that the majority agreed on. We're putting us close to the 15 million and go out and see again how those come back and proceed that direction.
Are there any projects, like the digester lid, that we can push to 27 to allocate, 1.55 million in projects right now that we can put on hold for another 8 months, 9 months?
So I would tell you that would be challenging. If you recall the budget process that we entered into and the real cutting within the general fund and some general fund related departments that we tried to do to get the general fund as close to balanced as possible, we cut pretty deep. We removed many, if not all, of certain departments' projects. We postponed replacement work. We just went pretty ugly in terms of the depth of our cuts. So the types of things that are out there right now, and again, we're not talking about projects in the utility funds that might get cut, because that's really not going to help us get to a number. It's general fund areas that I think would help us get to an area, and there's not that much currently proposed in the 425 fund. Remember, the 425 capital fund has two sub-funds. It has the 430 fund, which is, for lack of a better term, building maintenance or maintenance related stuff, and then there's the 431 fund, which is the park fund. And as Ms. Fix indicated, the reason the general fund looks good is because we're not moving a lot of park dollars over to the 431 fund this year, and in years past, because we've cut some projects out of the future there. They're still in the capital plan, but they're not in any budget document in terms of planned expenditures down the road, other than that budgeting tool dollar. So in the general fund, the only thing I can really think of that is something that I was asked to put back in and not removed, and it was removed from an existing project, was free park. Right now, we have $300,000 in the 26 budget to do the free parking lot. In fact, I think engineering is getting ready, if not, has already published that offering for quotes at this point in time. And essentially, it's a parking lot. We have 2 parking lots that we've awarded the contracts to, the Southwest parking lot. I've talked to you about timing and the importance of that project, as well as the City Hall parking lot project, which was something that was bumped and is on schedule, but we've already awarded that contract. So we would be in some situations with awarded contracts and not proceeding in those particular areas. We have some vehicle replacements that are scheduled, nothing of a major award within the general fund. I know police, Director Chafin cut some replacements in the general fund as part of our budgetary process. So we don't have a ton there. Now, I answered that specifically to a question about current year projects that are scheduled. What we do have, and a discussion that Ms. Fix and I had, was we do have surplus funds in some of those areas. So specifically in terms of the 425 fund, there is cash fund balances that are available and unencumbered and potentially available to use. If you wanted to reduce the amount of the debt issuance in these areas, you could use cash from the 425 fund. Specifically, it might be the 431 portion of the 425 fund to do that. But what impacts does that have? And again, you're kind of running afoul of what I said. You don't have to take my word for it. You can look it up. But you're basically using cash today, which is current taxpayer dollars, to fund a project that's going to support 20 or 30 years of citizens in terms of that. But we do that in other areas. But you would definitely be doing this on a larger scale than we normally do if you use cash in those areas. Is it right or wrong to do that? I'll leave that to your decisions, but my recommendation would be to find some balance in there. In addition, you have funding balances in, for instance, 2 funds that you probably don't think much about, the motor vehicle licensing fund and the gas fund. And both of those funds pay for the majority of traffic signal work that we do annually. You have funds there that could go towards pedestrian hybrid beacons or one of the 2 signalization projects that go on. You don't have to use debt to do that. You could use cash in those areas, but what you've done is then run both of those funds down to not much in terms of cash reserves in those areas, which we would just have to be diligent to manage as we rebuild the cash balances in those areas. So, like in anything we do, it's a trade-off. What do you want to do? What are you comfortable with doing? How do you want to do it? Then give Ms. Fix and myself time to figure out what the ordinance should look like and provide you with guidance on where to go. In the end of the day, I'm asking you to consider giving us guidance in terms of an amount. If you don't want to do anything, we're going to proceed with the or the 13.2 that we currently have authorization for. And we'll just tell the design team, do not design these other add-ons, that's where we're going to go. But if you're serious, like the discussion seemed to be about some type of additional item, we need that dollar amount so that a supplemental can be prepared for your next council meeting, and you need to make that decision in an open forum. We can't wait and have discussions outside of an open forum and then tell us in a week, get a supplemental ready for this amount. That would be not in concert with Ohio law.
If we add that 1.55, that puts our debt service, I'm not sure if that's the right word to use, to 12.2%, you know. Preferred target is 10, we start getting up to 15, you know, we might have some credit rating issues, it sounds like. That's right now if we didn't do anything, 11.5. If we just left the 13.2 in. So I guess my concern is, what if there's some other projects that come up this year where we need additional funds? And so we're already increasing it to 12.2, and then, you know, something comes up and we got to give, you know, another supplemental appropriation for other items throughout the year. Is that just going to, that's just going to compound on that number? That's a concern of mine.
Mine as well.
I would agree with that, too.
I'm in support of just keeping it at the 3.2 million, the original.
Mr. Profit, I'm going to throw it to you. How would we proceed here? Should we go to some kind of vote, or?
Well, as Director Hiscock pointed out, we want to make sure everything is done in an open forum and not violative of the Open Meetings Act.
Right.
So I think the discussions that you're proceeding with now are proper. However, if you're looking to have a vote, you don't want individuals on council saying, this is going to be my vote, and then turn around and vote. So it needs to be an open discussion on how you want to proceed, what your thoughts are, and then have someone place that down as a vote, and you either vote it up or down.
So I would recommend, I mean, as to have that continued discussion, because, so for example, one of you might say, hey, I'd like to have, some of these improvements. I'm hearing there's some concern with debt. I'm concerning with, but hey, we could do this, do that. I've heard Director Hiscock says, well, we have a little cash. Maybe somebody says, well, can we do part of it here and part of it there? Or, I don't think we need to do the 1.7, but maybe we do 1.5. Well, wait a minute, 1.5, maybe if we don't do the signs next year, that 1.4, all of a sudden, how do we do the 1.4? Is that all debt, or is that debt in cash, or is it, or maybe we reduce it from that? But those are the types of discussions that I think between you all to continue to have. And as individuals will speak, we'll get a little bit of a direction, and then maybe we can come to consensus. But I think the main thing is we just need to have some sort of a consensus. But I probably made this as clear as mud. But I'm just kind of throwing out some ideas of what to spur a conversation.
In the legal way.
It's legal as long as we have a conversation. And so if somebody has an opinion, I think you just spurt it out.
Can we have multiple pieces of legislation? I don't know how you find out everyone's opinion without doing it. So if some people are in favor, whatever, of 1.55, I heard a couple comments up here that leaving it at the 13.2, but a lot of this was stemmed by the fact that it seemed like everyone was on board with making sure we did the safety bump outs, which is 310,000. So 13.2, in my mind, is not the number. So if you say, because there's things on here that I could go with or I could live without, there's, so without having multiple pieces, I don't know how you get to that answer. Because if you throw one up there for 1.55 or 1.7, a piece of legislation, and it goes down, then you're not getting any of it.
I kind of agree. Like, one thing for me is the safety bump out. I think that's something that's necessary because it is dangerous crossing in some of those spots, and I think that is something I would really like to see for sure. So, as John said, I think maybe we need to do something like that.
Question for Ms. Fix. If we did we said the 1.7 or something would put us up to about 12.2 in general fund debt. And I can't, and I think, I don't know what the percentage was if we went to 155. But if those were split and we only did, if again, this is just a thought, not to drain the 431 fund down all the way, but if we did, if the council wanted to go ahead and say, let's do 155, we'll authorize that. If we split half of that from the 431 fund and half from debt, that would keep our debt ratio down a little bit, but it's not going to strip the 431 fund completely. It's going to lower it considerably, but that's a happy medium to come up with the amount of money that it seems like it's going to take to get more of the niceties that the majority from the work session came about. I'm just trying to look at ways to marry it together. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think it is a good
gives us
compromise.
Closer to 12.
Part cash, part debt for the additional. If you did split 1.55 in half, we would likely stay under 12% of the income tax allocation for total general fund debt service.
And that's one of the things I heard was a big concern, is that we don't really want to exceed that a whole lot more. But we do, from what I heard from that meeting also, Mr. Hiscock's notes, there are some things the council would like to see added in, but how do we do it and do it equitably, but not strip down the 431 fund all the way? So I'm just throwing that out there as an idea. I don't have a vote in it, so I'm just trying to take everybody's thoughts and comments into consideration and say, is there something we can do here?
And how would we be able to put money back into the 431 fund? Like, would that get funded if we removed money from it?
So again, the 431 fund is a sub-fund of the 425 fund. Without getting too particularized, it basically is a fund designated for park-related improvements. Currently, all park-related capital improvements, other than private donations or grants, come from the general fund, basically in the form of movements of money from the general fund to the 431 fund. In the same way, like all other general fund reliant departments, which includes the administration, engineering, auditor's office, Suprema Center, WCTV, all of the general fund related departments, if they have capital expenditures, they're moved normally from the general fund into those areas during the budgetary process to account for capital expenses in those areas. So we would begin to replenish any use of 431 funds by being committed to move dollars into that fund from the general fund, or to explore alternative financing opportunities and replenish it there. There is something to note. For instance, in our current budget, there's a $900,000 revenue piece that would be going to 425, and within 425 it will be specifically going to 431. And that is a private donation that you've probably heard me talk about during budget process. That type of a donation and any type of funding source similar to that is usually what we refer to as a restricted funding source, which means it has to be used for the intended purpose in which we receive it and accept it. So it's got to be used for, in that particular case, the passive park development out at the Brickyard. So it can't be diverted, converted to cash and used for a downtown project, unless we had conversations with the donor, or unless it met restricted fund usage language that says, hey, that could be used as a park. East Park's renovation is a park. We can use park dollars for that kind of thing. So we would just need to analyze those types of opportunities to do that. And I would tell you, there was a purpose between trying to build cash in the 431 fund, knowing the types of projects that we had coming down the pike. Many of those projects have been either removed or delayed from the pike, so that money is sitting there. The reason not to use it would be those projects will be coming, and you've got less debt to issue on those projects if the cash is there in that. So again, it's about priorities, the same or similar priorities you all make in your professional lives and your personal lives. We just have to be committed to making those priorities in our budget decisions moving forward. To Mr. Berger's question or others, how do I tell you that we won't have future projects this year that will need supplementals for it? I don't. But what I can control is whether we bring you supplementals or not. And so we'll just have to live within our means for the time being in terms of those projects. We don't have a project that I know of that's going to come to us and say, we need $1.4 million because I want to build a zip line or I want to put a splash pad in. We don't have those types of projects on deck right now. What we do have projects on deck is a Southwest parking lot and a City Hall parking lot that I don't know what they're going to run into when they start uncovering things. But it's probably not going to be $1 million supplemental, since those total project fees or costs are much less than that. But there is some unknown. But what we have to do is prioritize our expenditures that we bring to you. Knowing what we're trying to do, knowing about your concern with debt, we can't just bring supplementals to you and say, don't worry about the percentage of debt. We won't do that. That's what you can hear from me today, that I won't be bringing those unless I absolutely have exhausted other forms of funding in those realms. We just won't do that. We can't do that.
Should we then just go down each of these items here and, as a council, and figure out who's on board for what, or?
I think we can't do that.
Yeah, we can't do that. We have to have it done.
So not a vote, but I guess,
I don't,
Actually, I don't want to speak for Mr. Proudfoot, but I don't think you can individualize your votes, or I would recommend that you do not do that. By that I mean, don't pick and choose through that. Have a group discussion, put a number forward through a motion, and see what the votes tell you. That doesn't have to be the only motion you do. You can go that route. You can talk about why you want to support something or don't support a number, but I would caution you to say, I like this option because of that reason. I would tell you more to make fiscally based recommendations on your vote.
why don't we go about it this way? Does anybody want to make a motion, and we will take a vote, and pending that outcome, then maybe there's a different motion that comes about.
Well, I can make a motion to go with the, we're already up to the, make sure all the numbers, we started with the 13.2, then we had the 1.5 on here for North Park, and then we were at 1.55 above that. I would make that motion to continue that direction. And in support of that, I think that we probably wouldn't be having any of these discussions if we weren't already tearing up the downtown. It just keeps coming back to me that you're tearing it up. Don't put down what was there in, 1983. And with some of these amenities that we're adding in, we're using more of the sidewalk space, which is prime real estate anyway, with some of the grading and everything else, you'll be able to walk around the trees. Anyway, I think that's, in my opinion, that's what I would like to see, and my reasoning behind that. So that's my motion.
Let me just clarify that you are making a motion to increase the project by $1.55 million to the total of $14.8 million. Is that correct?
Well, now wait a second here, because we had the 13.2, which was the base, and then the 1.5 on top of that was North Park, correct?
No.
No, the 13.2.
Okay, right.
13.2 includes taking North Park out.
That was part of, that was already, that's right, it started at 11, that's right.
13.2, or I'm sorry, the previous council approved
The 14.
13.2.
Yep.
You're proposing, or your motion is to increase that amount by $1.55 million.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Mel,
No.
Wait, who said no?
Hines,
Berger?
Maxwell.
Mr. Rosberg,
Yes.
might I make a suggestion? Given the magnitude of the decisions that have taken place and the importance of this project, you certainly have the ability to poll the votes of your council members so that the clerk may accurately reflect the votes as received.
All right. Will the clerk please take a roll call vote
On that motion.
on the motion?
Yurcheck?
Yes.
Maxwell?
No.
Hines?
no.
Berger?
No.
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
Reese?
Yes.
May?
Yes.
Did I get everybody?
That has passed. The council has approved for you to we have approved that there will be $1.55 million more approved for the downtown project. So if you would go back to the consultants and let them know. Should we then also discuss a way of funding it?
Yes, essentially, that vote dictates that a supplemental be prepared for your consideration and vote at the next meeting.
This allows you to get creative with how you do it.
Yeah.
Possibly.
It does. Essentially, what it does is it gives us a budget, and that budget will be reflective of the discussions to date. I can assure council of that. But your vote was strictly a discussion vote at this point.
Correct.
The true vote on funding the project comes at the level of a supplemental appropriation that will be placed before you and read at the next council meeting.
I have a quick question, and I don't know if this is something you can do. I think a lot of the concern is that, that 12%, going up to that 12% and then possibly increasing it. Is there perhaps maybe a way that administration can put together like a 5 or 10 year plan saying, hey, this is how we're going to bring that back to 10? Is that something that can...
We already exceeded the 10. We're already at a point above the 10, but you're saying...
Bringing it back, like if there's a plan in place in the next 5, 10 years?
That is the general fund cash reserve policy. That's what that does. It projects it out. So debt service does decline.
It does fall off.
It'll start falling in 28 slightly, 1/20th if it's a 20-year debt. Well, not exactly that much, but the principal starts being reduced. And so we do have those numbers and we can present those, yes.
That just might give people a better feeling seeing that it is going to maintain,
Right.
not dramatically rise.
Right.
And it is good to note that, during the next 5 years, by my reading of the debt repayment schedule, we have some debts that are falling off in that period of time too, general fund debts. So you're going to not have as much debt service payments going on in the future too. The key is to continue that trend, if you will, to make sure that we stay in the right percentages that we want to stay in.
Are we still, with this supplemental appropriation, are we still looking to separate the wayfinding items? Or is that 1.5 going to include that wayfinding?
No, I think it was just a blanket 1.55 to let the designers be creative with what they can do with what we had just allocated. There was nothing specific as to what was to be done.
Okay.
And you haven't authorized that part of the project moving forward. That'll come when we present a GMP to you, the CMAR process. And we can certainly decide what to move forward with or what not to at that point in time.
Sure.
Anything else for the Committee of the Whole Finance meeting at this time? I will accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned. We will take a 5-minute recess before we begin the full council meeting. Good evening and welcome to the regularly scheduled Wadsworth City Council meeting for Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026. It is currently 7:10 p.m. Will you please rise? And remain standing for your invocation.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Almighty God, who has given us this good land to be our heritage, we acknowledge our dependence on you for all things, and we thank you for your blessings, including the right and privilege to govern ourselves in this free land. We pray that you would grant us all wisdom to make good decisions for the future of this community. Through Christ our Lord we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Will the clerk please take the roll?
Berger.
Here.
Hines.
Here.
Maxwell.
Here.
May. Here. Reese.
Here.
Stugmeyer.
Here.
Yurcheck.
Here.
And Rossbert.
Here. You've had the opportunity to review the minutes for regular council meeting of January 6th and January 20th, 26. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make that motion to accept the council meeting from both the 6th and January the 20th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes have been approved. We are now into the visitors portion of our meeting. If anybody from the audience would like to come up and address the council, please do so. You can step up to the podium, state your address, and we'll give you 2 or 3 minutes to speak. Seeing none, we'll move on to our correspondence. Is there any correspondence this evening?
There is no correspondence.
Can we move on to our committee and commission reports? We'll begin with Councilmember Stugmeyer with Public Service.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Public Service Committee meeting will next meet on Tuesday, February the 10th, 5:30 p.m. here in council chambers.
Public Safety Committee, Councilmember Yurcheck.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Safety Committee will next meet on Wednesday, February 11th at 4:45 p.m. in council chambers.
Public Ways, Councilmember Maxwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Ways Committee will meet on Monday, February 9th, 2026 at 6 p.m. in council chambers.
Economic Development and Planning, Councilmember Hines.
Thank you, Mr. President. Economic Development and Planning will meet Monday, February 9th at 5 o'clock here in council chambers.
The Audit Committee will meet Friday, February 13th at 3 p.m. in the Administrative Conference Room. And the Committee of the Whole Finance met this evening at 5:30 p.m. We'll move on to the commissions. Councilmember Reese, Airport Commission.
Thank you, Mr. President. Airport Commission will next meet on Thursday, April 16th at 4 p.m. in council chambers.
Stormwater Commission, Councilmember May.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Stormwater Commission will next meet on Tuesday, April 14th at 5 p.m. in council chambers.
Shade Tree Commission, Councilmember Hines.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Shade Tree Commission will probably, we don't have a date set, but we'll probably be meeting this spring and looking probably in April.
Planning Commission will meet on Monday, the 9th at 7 o'clock here in council chambers. Cemetery Board, Mr. Maxwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Cemetery Board will meet Wednesday, February 18th, 2026 at 5 p.m. in council chambers.
Cable TV Commission, Councilmember Berger.
Thank you, Mr. President. Cable TV Commission will meet Thursday, April 2nd at 4 p.m. in council chambers.
And Senior Citizens Commission, Councilmember Stugmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senior Citizens Commission meeting had our first meeting of the year yesterday at the Suprema Senior Center. Our next meeting has been set. It will be Easter Monday. That's April the 6th, 3:30 p.m. at the Suprema Senior Center at 617 School Drive.
That will bring us to our legislation this evening. Ms. Darlington, if you would read our legislation.
Thank you. We'll start with our one and only first reading this evening. Ordinance number 26-029 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember Zach Berger and discussed at Committee of the Whole. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to purchase a new Caterpillar Model 92614A wheel loader from Ohio Cat through participation in a Sourcewell contract and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend the 3-reading rule on ordinance number 26-029.
Second?
Yurcheck?
Yes.
Hines?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
Maxwell?
Yes.
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
Reese?
Yes.
And May.
Yes.
Mr. President, I call the question on ordinance number 26-029.
Hearing no objection to Councilmember Berger's proposal to call the question, will the clerk please take a roll call vote on the adoption of ordinance number 26029?
May?
Yes.
Reese?
Yes.
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
Hines?
Yes.
Maxwell?
Yes.
Yurcheck?
Yes.
Ordinance number 26029 has been adopted.
On our second readings, ordinance number 26-002 on second reading, sponsored by Councilmember Mike Reese and discussed at Committee of the Whole. An ordinance to amend Section 34.36 of the codified ordinances of the City of Wadsworth to provide for the allocation of income tax receipts of $4,767,961 during fiscal year 2026 and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I move that we place ordinance number 26-002 on third reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Any opposed?
Ordinance number 26002 has been placed on third reading.
Thank you for your help. Ordinance number 26-015 on second reading, sponsored by Councilmember Chris Maxwell and discussed at Public Service. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter into an agreement for professional engineering services for design of the 2026 sanitary sewer overflow SSO reduction project and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I move that we place ordinance number 26-015 on third reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Ordinance number 26-015 has been placed on third reading.
Ordinance number 26-026 on second reading, sponsored by Councilmember Jeannie Hines and discussed at Economic Development and Planning. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter into an agreement with the Wadsworth Community Improvement Corporation to act as agent for the city pursuant to Section 1724.10B of the Ohio Revised Code for the sale or lease of lands owned by the City of Wadsworth, authorizing the sale of approximately .131 acre parcel number 040-20C-17-060, owned by the City of Wadsworth to Grace Evangelical Lutheran Church, setting the terms of the said sale and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I hereby move to amend proposed ordinance number 26-026, titled to parcel number 040-20A-17-060 and Section 1 to include city shall pay the Wadsworth Community Improvement Corporation a 4% fee for acting as an agent in the sale, and Section 2, parcel number 040-20A-17-060.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? I'll have to read it again. So now we have amended ordinance number 26-026 on second reading, still sponsored by Councilmember Jeannie Hines. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter into an agreement with the Wadsworth Community Improvement Corporation to act as agent for the city pursuant to Section 1724.10B of the Ohio Revised Code for the sale or lease of lands owned by the City of Wadsworth, authorizing the sale of approximately .131 acre parcel number 040-20A-17-060, owned by the City of Wadsworth to Grace Evangelical Lutheran Church, setting the terms of the said sale and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I move to suspend the three reading rule on amended ordinance number 26-026.
Second.
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
Reese?
Yes.
May?
Yes.
Yurcheck?
Yes.
Maxwell?
Yes.
Hines?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
Mr. President, I call the question on amended ordinance number 26-026.
Hearing no objection to Councilmember Hines' proposal to call the question, will the clerk please take a roll call vote on the adoption of amended ordinance number 26-026?
Berger?
Yes.
Reese?
Yes.
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
May?
Yes.
Yurcheck?
Yes.
Maxwell?
Yes.
Hines?
Yes.
Amended ordinance number 26-026 has been adopted. This brings us to the conclusion of our legislation. Is there anything else, other items from the administration? Other items from council? I will accept a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We are adjourned.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.